Thomas, looks like it's 12 and we also have Jan McCosh on the line. So do you want to give it a couple more minutes or go ahead and get started?
I think let's give it a couple of minutes for those who might just be logging in or working through the link.
Just as an FYI, the phone number given in the email does not work.
Oh, thanks, Katie.
669, it goes to someone's voicemail.
And, you know, just for the record, if somebody is using that, I just went back and looked at that. If you're using the 669, that's for one tap mobile. I think your better bet would be dial by location and just choose one of those numbers below that one. Sometimes that that one tap mobile number, they don't work. And I'm not actually sure what they're intended to do. That's a good point, though. We should keep that clean.
And unfortunately, I can't find a place to get the phone number, and I need to dial in because I need to go somewhere. So it's interesting. I'm not even quite sure how to get the phone number.
Actually, Katie, when you look at your invite, do you see a dial by your location below that number you just recited?
No, the invite is from an email from Carol. There's nothing underneath there. It's just a Zoom link or a dial by phone. And then if you click to the join the Hideout Planning Charette, it just brings you straight up to the open Zoom, and you don't have an option to call.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you, I'm going to put in the chat a phone number that people can use. There it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Everyone still there?
We are. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Are we ready to get started? Does that work?
Yeah. I'm trying to make Jan a co-host, but my screen keeps bouncing around.
Here, let me see if I can pull up the.
Every time I click on her, then the screen moves because we have new people joining.
You see that screen, is that correct now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jan, are you there? I think maybe
I am, Thomas.
Great. Okay. I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and get started? And Kathleen, if people enter, if you see them, if you don't mind admitting them.
Yep.
But
Thomas, do you want to come live or video? Just makes it easier to
let me
present.
there, and then I'll share my screen as well. Let's see. Okay. Now you see me and the screen, right? Is that correct, Jan? You see this? You see the?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, folks, for joining us. We're excited to have a number of you joining us. It's been something that we've been wanting to do for quite some time, is get an opportunity where we could present to the community and get input and just keep you all up to date on some of the things that are happening relative to planning. So just by way of introductions, my name is Thomas Eddington. I'm the town planner. We have Kathleen from the town of Hideout on, and we have Jan McCosh, the town administrator, on, and I think we maybe have, is there anybody else that I'm missing from town hall, Jan? I can't see everybody, but it's it's our pleasure to kind of work with you today. Our hope is to walk through a number of slides just to kind of give you a background of what's going on relative to some of the land use planning issues throughout the community, and then really engage you all in a dialogue. Jan, did you want to say anything before we launch into this?
No, go ahead.
Great. Okay. So we're hoping that this is pretty darn casual. And I know that sometimes doing things by way of Zoom, it can make it a little bit wonky in terms of trying to raise your hand or just interject, but really feel free to do either or as we walk through some of these slides. Again, it's really intended to be informative, informational for you, and then really to get your input. And so anytime along the way you have questions or input, please just jump in and we'll address it at that point. So we call this a planning charrette, and we, kind of thought we should make sure that everybody knows what a charrette is. It's kind of a planner and a designer term, but really it's an opportunity for a collaborative process where people come together and address primarily planning and design or development issues, and really try to get to a recommendation that is beneficial for everybody. And it's interesting. The term charrette is French. It comes from the School of Beaux Arts times when it means cart, but it was from a time when the designers at the school would be working very, very hard on the very last day before a project was due. And a cart would come by and collect their drawings for jury review, for peer review the next day at the school. And they would almost be running and putting the finishing touches on their projects as they went along, collaborating, talking to people along the way. And so it's kind of got a bit of a unique history. But the intent is, again, to really work together and get input from you all and collaboratively aim for a solid planning, recommendation, vision, concept to move forward with. We thought we'd kind of start from with the numbers for the town of Hideout. As you can see here, the population's about 1,100. I think Jan knows it exactly. I think it may be 1,152. And so we've been growing pretty rapidly over the course of the past few years. You've certainly experienced that with construction. You've seen new neighbors, new residents move into town. What you see there on the left-hand side is a population pyramid, and it kind of gives you an indication of the age groups in the community. And you can see that while you probably think of the community as a little bit older, we have some, a number of second homeowners who have moved in. You tend to think of us as maybe a little bit older in terms of a demographic, but actually, we have a fair number of young people in the community. That's kind of on the very bottom 2 and 3 lines, up to 14 years old. And certainly with Deer Mountain housing, we do have some younger folks in there, which is nice because it gives us a diversity of population that maybe you didn't think that we had. Again, that graph is ideally pretty much a pyramid. We're not quite there, but we're probably doing better than we thought. I think that typically we would think we would be a little bit more top heavy. You can see the graph on the right-hand side is showing our population projections based on the state of Utah demographic and research department. So probably no surprise, it looks as if we're going to grow pretty rapidly. And given the number of entitlements for housing, the new lot development, et cetera, that probably does make some sense. Taking a look at the community from a more physical perspective, you can see that we've got about 850 units. Keep in mind can you see my cursor? Jan, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
If you take a look down here, over the course of the past maybe 5 years, we've issued about 606 COs, certificates of occupancy, for people to move into their housing. But with those and the Deer Mountain community, we've got about 850 units-ish on the ground right now. If you take a look over on this map, I know it's really hard to see. If we want to discuss this later, I'll zoom in, but you can see the green dots are where certificates of occupancy have been issued, where people have moved in. And you can see the lighter colored dots are where we have legal lots of record, and so they probably be developing on that lot now or in the near future. So you could start to kind of get a physical perspective of how the community is building out. This next slide is it's a little bit of a simplified slide of the one before, but it starts to show the town boundary, and it starts to show where some of the subdivisions within the community are. So you can start to see Deer Springs is up in this area. We've got Golden Eagle over here, Soaring Hawk here, certainly Hideout Canyon, the golf course is in this area. You can start to see that much of the town has already been platted, entitled, and subdivided. And so while all of these areas may not yet have housing on them, they are entitled for housing. And you'll see growth in those areas. As we think about that growth, our guiding document is the 2019 general plan. And here you can see the vision statement. The general plan is kind of that blueprint for growth. It's that foundation for the growth in the community. It also sets kind of foundational aspirations and goals for transportation and housing and infrastructure development, et cetera. As you can see here, it's got an overriding vision statement that really focuses on the views, the locational amenities. The town of Hideout is pretty famous for beautiful views overlooking Jordanelle, the recreational component, certainly maintaining and cultivating inviting neighborhoods, and then building a connected community, which really kind of focuses on tying our community together with, neighborhood commercial, and transit opportunities. The land use goals are also outlined in the Hideout general plan, and keep in mind these are just excerpts. The general plan is quite long. It's on the website, so you're certainly welcome to go and read it on there. But for sake of the discussion today, we kind of kept it in the land use category, and you can take a look here again, preserving view sheds and maintaining the character of the community with an assurance of mixed use development were really the two fundamental land use goals contained within the general plan. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this today, and specifically how it relates to some of the existing development, past development, and certainly future development opportunities. As we think about moving forward with development, it will require collaboration. Certainly this is true for any community, but Hideout, we're a small community. And so we'll want to make sure that we partner with our neighbors, whether that's Park City, Summit County, Wasatch County, the Master HOA, the trails, Mountain Land Trails, the regional system. All of these folks, developers on the private side, all of these folks will play a role in how we develop and grow, and we'll want to assure that everybody's working collaboratively in a partnership approach. Utah Office of Tourism and GOED is the Governor's Office of Economic Development. You can see that on the top left there, but all of these entities will play a pivotal role in how we develop in the future. Thinking about the general plan, the 2019 general plan, thinking about the partners, the regional partners that we will want to collaborate with. In 2020, the town council really took serious note of kind of an overriding component contained within the 2019 general plan, and that was the focus on trails, parks, recreation, that kind of connectivity that is unique to the Wasatch Back given our environment. And so in late 2019 and 2020, we worked on a Parks, Open Space, and Trail plan. I'll go through a few slides that outline some of the recommendations in that plan. This is really a component of the general plan, just with more specificity. You can see that, again, it built upon the three vision statements contained within the general plan: the views, neighborhood atmosphere, and connectivity in the community, both from a transit perspective and land use, mixed land uses in particular. Parks, open space, trails might feel just as they might feel like they just live in the recreational world, but actually they tie into our transportation infrastructure. They tie into opportunities to preserve, protect, and take advantage of passive recreation and views in the environment, as well as providing us tourism and economic development opportunities. So it's important to remember that all of these components are very well interconnected. The Parks Open Space and Trails Plan, we call it the POST plan, really kind of was founded, again, by recommendations contained within the general plan, which flies at a higher level. We're getting a little bit more detailed with the POST plan, but you can see on the left-hand side, these were public outreach surveys for the general plan. You can see the one on the left was, what do you dislike about Hideout? The larger the text, the larger the font, meant that that particular item received more responses. And so what do you dislike about Hideout? Again, this is from the 2019 general plan. You can see probably the top 3, 4 were lack of trails, growth, noise on 248, construction. So those were issues that people said, we dislike this, we kind of want to address these, let's pay attention to them. You could see on the right-hand side, some connectivity in this kind of word cloud, but what would you like to see changed in Hideout? Again, the larger the font meant that that particular item received the most responses, but more trails, slow the development, access to the lake, community feel, recreational center. You could start to see what people, specific areas where there was general consensus within the community. So that was utilized to really build the Parks Open Space and Trails Plan. Actually, John, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Hi, I'm John Blamer and a future resident of the area. I just have a question. In the survey, it honed in on, I think, why we need this program. And maybe you can help. I know you talked about the growing population, and that does give some indication as to why we need to talk about this. But I thought that the survey went into other reasons, things, financial reasons, trying to avoid raising taxes. I mean, could you highlight some of that before we get in deeper into the details?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is very good. You're actually setting this up very, very nicely, because 2 slides down, we're going to go into the community survey, which does get into more detail. So can we discuss it at that point when I have it up on the screen?
That's perfect. Thanks, Thomas.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? I can't always see the hands. Jan or Kathleen, don't hesitate to interrupt me if I don't see hands over there.
No one else.
Okay. So the post plan is also on the website. Don't hesitate to take a look at it, but it did get into some detail in terms of priorities. I won't walk through these, but it was really kind of a focus on making sure that private development was connected to the public rights of way, and that neighborhoods were connected to each other, ensuring a couple of the low-hanging fruit trails at the time, a year and a half ago, were connected over in Deer Springs and Russell and Platte. Those are well underway. And then really kind of that collaborative opportunity to think about maybe a separated trail along 248, looking for potential parkland in the town of Hideout, probably something that'll get more and more important as more people move in. But as we always like to say, buying land now is better than buying land later for recreation. It will continue generally to go up in value. And then there were some additional connections to Jordanelle State Park issues and recommendations. We've worked through that with some of our new subdivisions, ensuring that there is a kind of a landing strip that allows us as a community, as a public entity, to ensure that we have publicly owned land right adjacent to the Jordanelle State Park, because that's a requirement to then make a trail connection. We're working through that in detail, and we've incorporated those connection points on subdivisions that we've approved over the course of the past couple of years, and then looking at conservation easements to protect portions of the community. But really, if you have an opportunity, take a look at the both the general plan and the post plan. They are online. And then John kind of alluded to the community survey. And so I thought what we would do is walk through those slides, those response slides that generally dealt with land use issues. And so for those of you that may not be aware, back in June of this summer, we launched a resident survey. I think there were about 10 or 15 questions on there. And it was in an attempt to help us understand some planning projects that were underway early in the summer, as well as kind of give us a pretty solid understanding of the direction that the community thought we should be going relative to land use planning in the future. So most of the folks were full-time residents. Some were part-time. We asked if they owned their home. Looks like about 98-ish% did own their home. They were not tenants. There was some discussion with regard to the recommendation contained in the 2019 general plan recommending generally future development as either mixed use or commercial development. And so asking folks, do you still support that ideology to kind of focus on commercial development, since we don't have any commercial development right now. And as you can see here, about 70% plus thought that focusing on commercial development would be important from both a convenience perspective, I'm sure, mixed use or commercial opportunities for, say, grabbing a coffee, getting a jug of milk, things like that, as well as maybe some thought of it from a sales tax and a fiscally responsible way for the community to continue to generate funds. There was a specific question, two of them actually, this one and the following. Hey, John, you're up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have details on that? Like, regarding the financial side of things, how are we struggling? If that's correct word to use, struggling, that's my word. But, in terms of that would lead us to increase taxes, right? Because that's what we're trying to avoid. Is that correct, Thomas?
I'll let Jan speak to this, but go ahead, Jan.
Sure. So we are typical of a new community. We are existing as a town based on our permit fees. And as the community develops in population, then it begins to support commercial. And for a typical established town, commercial revenues from sales tax typically are 4 times what we would get in property tax. And sales tax is broken down into 50% point of sale and 50% is allocated based on population. So that means, I like to use the idea, if you're on Amazon and you buy a new ski jacket, if you order that from the town or order that from your home in town, that's a point of sale. So we would get sales tax on that purchase as an acquisition in town, and then we would get, the state divvies up the other 50% of the sales tax, and it was come to us through a population pro rata allocation. So right now we have no point of sale happening other than what happens on Amazon or, maybe a little bit from the golf course, but it's very insignificant. So we need to be able to build up a commercial point of sale option to sustain financially the town, this now city, going into the future. We are not.
No doubt that sounds like a great opportunity on the commercial side, but I guess, so you answered, my question, why we're trying to generate more revenue. Commercial side generates 4 times the amount from permits. I'm just trying to understand though, it seemed like in the survey, if we don't take action, that the risk though is that financially, the city would be in trouble, which is why you would have to potentially raise taxes without such an action?
Correct. That's correct. So we need to take action now, get something into place so that, you know, it takes a while for commercial to be built. And so we need to get something in our plan to begin that process. We do not have an economic problem right today. This is purely, we're doing smart planning for sustainable revenues. And you're right, we would have to raise taxes at a significant rate. And that has happened to some cities. And we're trying not to make that error. So
No doubt, I'm sure many people wouldn't want that or plan for it, right? In our personal lives. So I
Yep.
think a lot of people support the concept here. But let me ask you, and I know that this is not directly related to this program where you're trying to talk about commercial sales, but there are many of us residents, some on this call, I see the names, that are future residents and people that are unable to get permits today, that the city is not collecting because we're not granting permits revenue that otherwise would have been generated, or future full taxes for a full home. And so I guess I get concerned, and as I put in my survey, I get concerned that if there's this risk of missing out on revenue, and if we don't have revenue either from commercial or otherwise, that there's a risk of taxes. Are all the residents aware of the missed revenue that's being kind of held up at Golden Eagle and what that impact is, right? Because Golden Eagle, as you showed on your map, maybe not in terms of number of homes, but in terms of land, it's massive, right? And there are people trying to give you revenue, but are unable to begin. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, has this been assessed, the impact from Golden Eagle and what that financial impact is to the city by not granting permits and losing taxes?
well, John, this has legal ramifications, and I don't think I can speak to it since our town attorney is not on, but hopefully this is a temporary issue with the permits, and it's not significant enough in the 30-foot view, right? I mean, hopefully they'll be resolved and that's not an issue. It's one-time money. And
I think for many people, though, this has been going on for 6 months or more, right? And it doesn't seem like there's an end date in sight. So, and given the fact, showing the map, Golden Eagle making up, at least in land, maybe not in lots, a massive amount of future revenue for you, both in permits and in full taxes, right? I mean, I think it's our rights as citizens to understand, future residents of Hideout, to know what the impact is to the city by withholding permits and also losing out on full taxes on that. I think we need to understand that before we talk about, I think, a new development or new areas, we need to better understand what we have available today and where we're not capitalizing on revenue.
well, again, this is a legal issue, and I don't feel comfortable speaking to it without our attorney present. And I know you spoke at the last council meeting. So
I did not. That must have been another homeowner.
Oh, I'm sorry. The issue was discussed at the last council meeting.
Jan, I wanted to second John's recommendation, which is I'm also a landowner at Golden Eagle. And I know there's many similar to me. John's further along in the process than I am, but there's many that I've spoken to that are delaying moving to Hideout, building in Hideout because of, the holdup in getting permits. And so I think there's huge opportunity there, and there's a really negative sentiment currently amongst landowners there, and we're potentially going to miss out on a lot of tax revenue by delaying that.
Okay, thanks for your input. I will certainly discuss this with Polly.
Could we have a definitive action from this meeting noted that you will at least talk to Polly McLean and ask if this assessment can be made, the financial loss from withholding permits and they're within the full taxes? I think that's a fair request, that we simply ask you to document that you will talk to Polly McLean explicitly about this request.
I will.
And I would also ask people, kind of as we walk through this today, really think of this more collectively. I think that it's really important for us as we move forward to look at the city holistically. But I definitely, I appreciate, Jan, you
Yes, I
taking
have logged your request. So Michael
Michael
Boone
I
has,
think you're up.
I'm sorry, is that, you guys talked over each other a little bit. Are you asking me to go?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off that prior discussion. So I wanted to ask about the Boulders Project because it seemed like that would have brought in a lot of commercial revenue for the city, and it seemed like the town council just sort of dragged out the whole thing, and then it just took too long for them. And I was wondering if the town has any plan to, I don't know, I guess treat development in a way that was more welcoming so that we can get to that place where we have that commercial development. Because that looked like it would have been a really beautiful development that would have been really great for the town that we just don't have anymore because things just took too long.
Well, this is you bring up a good point, and that's part of why we're here today, and that is to look holistically at what we want there, right? In that location and other locations. In that particular case, there was an application on land that was just zoned for residential, and they wanted to do more and they wanted to do higher density. They were working through that with the Planning Commission and the Town Council, who were, I think, generally supportive. There were concerns about density and some details, but that was being worked through at a fairly high level. Ultimately, I think it's my understanding, Jan, that the seller and the buyer didn't get a contract extension. Is that ultimately what happened, I think? And then when ended up being put on hold, and I don't know actually what the next steps will be. But I will say this, that as we kind of get a little bit further down in the slideshow, we really do want to talk to you and get input regarding what you think future land uses should be, right? Because right now, much of the community that is still unentitled is zoned for mountain residential. And so if we want to get additional neighborhood commercial or commercial, we'll want to look at recommendations for the general plan, land use, and potential future zoning. So as we get to some of the maps down the line, really help us out. That's where we're going to need it, because if a property is zoned for some commercial development, it's much easier to go through the process rather than coming in and trying to rezone property and going through that kind of change of zoning designation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that sounds like that would help. But I guess my concern is that there seems to be a lot of, in the Boulder Project's development, just a lot of micromanagement and all these demands for concessions that, I mean, the reason they needed the extension at all was because it took so long, right? So I guess my concern, and I'm not a current resident, I'm a future resident, is I would really like to see the town be more, I guess less micromanaging of like all these little parts of like what the rocks are going to look like, what like the curves are going to look like, or whatever, all these things where it's just like, let's just get this happening, right? Let's just make this happen. And it's not, in my view, it's not really the town's place at all to be at that level of detail controlling what commercial developments look like. So yeah, I agree.
And actually, and just I agree with you. And I will also say that the hang up there was not really about the aesthetics or the details. It was really about the fundamental land use. What I think the town and the Planning Commission and the Town Council were looking for was a commercial component. And I think that generally the developer was aiming in the same direction. You know, they were working out some nuances, but the existing zoning didn't allow for that. So it would have to be rezoned. And that, I think that was a significant barrier. Rachel, I think you have your hand. Oh, go ahead, Jan. But
I want to say I agree with Michael, and we learned so much from that story problem, and we have changed our policies, and you know, we want to be better at it next time. And we do have other options that are coming to us on that property. So this step in getting input is very important. But yes, I agree with you, and we have made changes. And it looks like Rachel, who is on our planning commission, is raising her hand as well.
Hi, actually, it's Brian.
Oh, hi, Brian.
Yeah, I just want to address the comment about micromanaging. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Brian Cooper, and I chair the infrastructure committee for the town. I'm a resident here in Shoreline 1. We're all trying to solve this problem of not having too much density, residential density, and still provide services to the community, and hopefully increase the tax revenue at the same time, right? And provide gathering spaces. And one of the things we liked about the Boulder development was the fact they had sort of an event center area that I think would have been nice. Would have been a good venue for weddings, and they had nice restaurants and an outdoor venue for concerts. So that kind of stuff, I think we'd all like to see. But what I will say about, in general, just because of my knowledge of the infrastructure requirements, we do have to work with developers to comply with our building codes. And in the case of Boulders, they were looking for a lot of exceptions, some of which I did not agree with, and some of which created fire hazards. The fire department probably would not have approved the plan. So these aren't really nitpicking stuff, right? You may not see it, but it's important stuff we have to work out. And we have to make sure that all the utilities are there, that the roads have the right widths and drainage and stuff like that to prevent floods. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it behind the scenes that you don't see. So I'll just say that the town is working diligently to solve those issues and try to do them more quickly next time around.
Hi, Brian. I just want to add on to that and also tag on to Michael, because I guess the question I'd have for you, Thomas, Brian, and Jan is there a pattern here? I listened to what Michael said about Boulder, and all I can do is feel a lot of relation to what we're feeling in Golden Eagle, the word micromanage, things of that nature. And then now I hear two developments that have either struggling or, basically in some way. And then we're talking about now creating a new development. And I guess I pose the question, do we have what we have? And I'm not indicating one way or the other. It's a question for you. Do you feel, Thomas and Jan, Brian, that we have our existing developments under control in the sense that we're ready to take something else on? Because I hear a pattern potentially between multiple subdivisions or different communities or developments, and they're very similar to each other. The micromanaging, the issues with the infrastructure, things of that nature. Are you ready to start a new development? Are you able to handle that?
I don't see the similarity, frankly. One is a question on permits and meeting state requirements. And this new development that, we're asking for input is a very high level, what should we be pursuing? So I don't see any parity there at all.
I would also maybe just add a little bit to that to say that development within the town of Hideout, it is the fastest growing community in the state right now. And so I think that development in the community is actually moving forward at quite a solid pace. And I think that certainly we can address future development. Part of our intent with these charrettes and future public outreach is to make sure that we get the land use planning, the mechanism, the general plan, the zoning ordinance in line with the community desires. And so a lot of that comes down to getting zoning on the ground correct and ensuring that the community gets the kind of development they want where they want it. And so I think that is part of the intent today. This is kind of an early step toward that. So I think that actually Hideout does a very, very good job of that in working and coordinating with developers. Probably, again, it's the fastest growing community in the state. It's it's a lot of work. You guys are seeing the ramifications of a lot of rapid development. And so hopefully we're addressing some of the impacts with regard to construction, et cetera. But I think that it is moving along, as smoothly as it can.
Sorry, I don't mean to, I just wanted to close the loop and reply to Brian real quick. I appreciate that there are definitely, health and safety concerns. And I guess what I would want to see from the town is that they stick to that, right? I understand that that's something that the planning commission has to look at, but then maybe you de-emphasize all the rest of the things about like what all the things specifically look like in all these ways, and then maybe the whole project can move along faster. And then I wanted to echo John a little bit in that the micromanagement idea seems to be a trend. I mean, what with the water restrictions that the town council is looking at, where what they would actually turn off the water in your home while you're there, even like potable, even like kitchen water, like living water, not just irrigation water. That's absolutely overreaching. That is not at all how the water usage idea should be approached. So like, I think, and then like there's a dark sky ordinance and all of that. It's just the micromanagement trend is for sure real. And I think that's a real problem for the town going forward. So I just wanted to close the loop on that. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Michael. And I would note that some of the ordinance recommendations that are coming forward, dark skies, et cetera, are very similar to the ordinances that are in place in Wasatch County and Summit County. They're very similar to ensure that there's a regional approach to how development takes place. Thanks for that. Thanks for the questions and comments, everybody. Actually, there's Court. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to shift gears just a little bit. You'd mentioned earlier in your presentation that around 800 COs have been fulfilled in the town of Hideout thus far.
About 600. Just to be clear, it's about 600, but with some of the existing units that were part of Deer Mountain, we're at about 800, 850, give or take.
Okay, perfect. And then with planning for about 1,500 more, correct?
Give or take.
And so that lands about 2,300 COs, and your projected population growth by 2040 was around 3,000. So you're assuming less than 1.5 people per household, right? So I'm just trying to understand those numbers a little bit better. When people bring up in the survey that they don't want higher density, more townhomes, more condos. And then we're talking about, population growth projections and then CO projections. It seems like the number of units that you're projecting is way too many.
The number of units that you saw were based on what is entitled, and so maybe unbuilt, but lots that are legal lots of record and can be built. Will they all be built before 2040? Kind of tying into that state population projection, we're not sure. Very likely, many of them will be, certainly, right? But population projections are also really hard because we look at primary population, right? In places in the Wasatch Back, Hideout is no different. There can also be secondary, second homeowners, and so population may be a little less than you would think it would be otherwise if you kind of assumed roughly 2 persons per unit. So keep that in mind when you look at those projections.
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess my concern as an owner would be, overbuilding. So you have too much supply. Also with, no commercial, right? And building moving into Camas and Oakley where there is commercial, does that lower our values as owners in the future?
Well, certainly that's one of the things we want to look at. And certainly John and Michael Poon also addressed it. And that is, how do we ensure that we collaborate to get the kind of development in that we want? And, those are, as we get down to a couple more slides, you'll start to see we're really wanting input on that. And we think we have some general support for mixed use and commercial development, but that's kind of really where we want to get to today.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you. So kind of along the line of this discussion was this survey question relative to what was being proposed up at the Boulders. And the question really was, indicate your preference for the kind of development up there. Again, right now, that property is zoned mountain, which is residential, 1 unit per acre. If we want to get commercial or mixed use up there, it would require a different zoning designation. And so the question was, right now, what is the desire of the community in terms of development up there? And generally, it was supported. Generally, the community supported a lower density development, kind of utilizing the existing mountain residential, which would put about 85 units up there, rather than the proposal, which had, I think it was 280 residential units, a hotel, and some condominiums, commercial development, et cetera. And so it didn't have as much support. There were a number of folks who said, it depends and I need more information. But just from a general survey perspective, generally less density was supported. That could be a result of people not knowing enough information. It could be a result of people concerned about density, construction, traffic, infrastructure, water, construction noise, et cetera. We don't know that, but it gave us an understanding that there were definitely some concerns with regard to density, but yet it felt that people wanted commercial development. We wanted to ask the same question a second way, and that was, if we look at that proposal through a fiscal lens, recognizing that commercial development, mixed use development is very good for the community from a fiscal perspective. It gives us sales tax dollars, potentially transient room tax dollars, hotel tax dollars, if you will. Then how would you view this particular project? And we still had a majority of folks supporting the less dense development, but it was a reduced majority, and more people indicated that they would support something more dense, which gave us an understanding that, we do want to balance this density, commercial development, and the fiscal coffers within the community. And so that helped us get an understanding that people were definitely concerned about property taxes. This is the secondary fiscal component question for the community, and that was with regard to nightly rentals. Right now, the community doesn't allow nightly rentals, specifically in the MDA, but also within the ordinance. There's only a couple of developments that have some nightly rental allowances. And the question was, would you support the allowance of nightly rental throughout the community? And it was a resounding no. And it was about 2/3% said no. With that being said, I think maybe what we have to hone in on is a little bit more detail, because this was throughout the community, but maybe there could be selected areas that kind of have more of a resort component that could have nightly rental. There is an economic benefit to the community, and maybe if they were defined, maybe that is something that would be supported. So we're not sure, but generally nightly rental got generally a no from the community, but it's something that we'll probably hone in on as we look at defining zoning designations. Would that be something that the community would be supportive of? Maybe not, we don't know, but we have to get additional detail, more clarity relative to that. Kind of getting to a more general community piece of input. What are your priorities in terms of different land uses or commercial uses that you would like to see in the community? And you can see here that generally people were fairly supportive of all of these, but you can see that cafes, restaurants, bodegas, small grocery store, all of those were very strongly supported. That is something that we heard from folks that they would like to see in the community. And again, part of our challenge is making sure that we define the right location, the commercial zoning or neighborhood commercial zoning or mixed zoning, to ensure that something like that can happen. Trail connections, how important is it? 6 out of 10 folks said very important. 3 out of 10 said somewhat important, and a few said not important. But generally, this is a 9 out of 10 folks said that is important. Ensure that the trail connectivity, a direction the community's been ensuring that we kind of connect those last miles, if you will. That is important, and we should continue that work. I think this was the last survey question on here. Was with regard to a bond, would you support the town issuing a bond for 10 million that would be used for public amenities, maybe a public park or a central gathering area? There was a rough repayment calculation outlined, and at this point, generally people were not supportive of that. They did not support the acquisition of property for public amenities or central gathering area yet. Maybe that changes. Maybe there is more support as the community grows and there's a desire for those spaces. Maybe not. I don't know. But at least right now, generally 6 out of 10 folks said not supportive of a bond. Then I think we just have a couple of slides, and that is really looking forward to some of the land use and planning opportunities. Again, a couple of you, all of you that have actually spoken have kind of hit on this. What are the low-hanging fruit opportunities moving forward? So what you see here is a map of the community. You can kind of see the rough outline of the community in the dotted red line. I'm sorry, this is maybe a little bit small, but you also see some of the areas of undeveloped, unentitled land in Hideout. So you can kind of see that the 2 red areas are some town-owned land that potentially offer opportunities for maybe commercial or mixed-use development. And then, of course, the other property is that blue area down there, which is the Boulders project that was discussed early this summer and that we asked a couple of survey questions about. There's also a little bit of land to the east of them that has also been wrapped into that. So this is a little bit larger than what the Boulders project is. This includes about 170 acres of land that's undeveloped. So these are really right now the only opportunities we have to look at future land use opportunities, because most of the other land has been entitled. There's some areas within the larger central area that might have some opportunities, but really these are some areas where we can start to make some significant impacts right now as we think about land use and zoning. And so I don't know if anybody has any input on this, but this is probably what we'll start to hone in on as we maybe move into maybe a second community charrette to really kind of get details and recommendations here. But at this point, I think this is the last slide. I think that is the last slide right there. But if there's any input, thoughts, recommendations, we're wide open. Tim, I think you have your hand up. Let's see. Tim, can you unmute? We can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. I've been a landowner there since 2006. I'm just west of the claim property off 248. And this session has been wonderful for me in learning what your overall objectives are. Clearly, you want to enhance the Hideout image. You want to build the value for all the residents that have invested their money in, but you also want to balance out a healthy city and ultimately drive people there that want to go there for a lot of reasons, both residential and hopefully from tourism, whatever it might be. There's no question there is no what I'll call a hallmark property anywhere in the Hideout footprint thus far that would really define the market. And seeking that out would be a really monumental task, but I think doable. Mm-hmm. My 15.5 acres, I'm looking at ideas as well, and we're going to be coming to you guys. So this has been very, very helpful. And good. To all the residents, we hope to be there someday enjoying this property.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. Michael, I think you have your hand up.
Hi, I might have missed this, but we haven't moved into Hideout yet. We're just building, and wanted to know what the status of the Richardson Flats, that whole thing was.
With regard to the Richardson Flats, the annexation project?
Right. Did the annexation occur? What's slated to occur there? Things like that.
I'll let Jan answer this, but it's my understanding that is in the appeal courts right now, I think in Summit County. Jan, am I right on that?
That's correct. It could be years till that's resolved. So our annexation was deemed void, and it's being appealed right now. That could be months, couple of years, but there are also other lawsuits regarding that annexation, lawsuits against the developer. So it's something I don't think that we can hang our hats on.
Can I
Okay,
ask a
thank
question
you.
on that? I think I read in the news that there was that Hideout, am I correct, did not win that case and had to pay the legal fees of the other county or something of that nature. Is that correct?
The developer who Nate Brockbank was the one who proposed the annexation, and he has picked up all the legal fees regarding that. So it's not a town expense, but yes, he settled many of the issues in the case, and he paid legal fees as an agreement.
Thank you.
Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate the information. It's helpful. Curious, and I apologize, I had to step away for a second, but was there any comment around the golf course? One, I Googled some information that's one point in time, maybe the land could have been sold and or they were going to get rid of it. If we are keeping it, I was wondering, what would be done to make it even more appealing? If people haven't played it, it's just great views, and I think would just attract more people, generating more revenue out of here too. So curious if there's any comments around that.
So Ryan, I think since the town doesn't own the golf course, I think we need to steer clear of that issue. It would be great to get some input on the places that we have control over, especially we have this potential opportunity of 113 acres that is on the market. And your questions and comments, I'm sure, are ones that we can address over a period of time, and actually would love to collaborate with the HOA and make that something productive. But at this point, it would be really great if we could move away from land that we don't have ownership of. So
Do we know? Do we know what the people that own it, what their plans are, or is that a conversation we have to address with them?
I don't even know what entity actually owns the golf course, and the HOA doesn't own it. But I think to the extent we can work collaboratively with the HOA, we may get somewhere. So I don't even know where to start on that. But this piece of 113 acres that we did due diligence on, the development that we were working, for maybe over a year and a half, we do have an option, and it would be great to know if the town could actually purchase the property. And of course, we don't have the resources. It's on the market for 25 million. But if we could work a concept on it, perhaps we could go get public funding. And I know in the hotel development, many loved the idea of a music venue. And, should we pursue that with public funding? Should, some of these concepts of, do we want a big amphitheater? Do we want to go big? Do we want to create a public venue that is significant and could draw people to the area? These kinds of concepts. Would love to get input on that piece and these other town-owned pieces.
Thank you.
John, I think you have a question, maybe?
Yeah, just as a potential future owner in Golden Eagle, to put a concert venue there, really, when we bought the lot, it was zoned residential, and that's why we bought. So if that was going to happen, chances are pretty good we would not continue with our housing plans there and would just hold on to that lot. I think you're going to find the same thing well, speculate that you're going to find the same thing with other Golden Eagle owners.
Agree. I just commented, but we would not build on our lot. We would sell it very quickly if a concert venue went in. And I think a lot of people that own lots are moving there for the tranquility and the views and the quiet, moving out of the big cities, out of California and other big cities, and even Salt Lake City. And putting a concert venue, I think, is going to drive the wrong population in and the right population out.
Totally agree. Do not support the music venue at all.
Let's see. Rachel, which is Brian, I think, right?
Yeah, it's Brian. I was just going to say, and Rachel's here too. We were the ones that kind of proposed, Rachel was the one who actually proposed the idea of some sort of a venue there. And so maybe not a giant concert venue, but I think, we've had some small gatherings here in the town and in our communities, small concerts that are not super loud. I think we could have we've been just doing this either in the maintenance yard or in back, in driveways and stuff. I think we could do something a little bit bigger than that would not, looking at the slope of that land, the sound would go mostly away from the homes above it, right? So I think we could design that such that it would not be a nuisance. And I'd also like to see, a nice restaurant and a wedding venue, right? It does, sort of a thing that, those all kind of go together. They're not impinging on, noise on the community. So I think we should look hard at that. I understand the town doesn't have the funds to buy that land, but possibly maybe we could lease it, talk to the owners. And, I know at one point they were even thinking about donating some land to us. So maybe we could work out at least a piece of that, either as a, long-term lease or, maybe they could finance the sale of the land over many years, something like that. That's something I think we should consider.
I'd like to just say in the survey that I saw, I don't recall seeing music venue as a highly rated item by the city. I saw restaurants and other things. So not sure how this became so prioritized, if it's just one or two people's in a power position to push it forward. But from what I can see in the chat and what people have said here, as well as from the survey, I don't recall this being favored by the residents. Is that correct? Was this a highly prioritized rated item, music venue?
John, I think what happened in the course of the Boulders development, in putting that together, the music part was enthusiastically supported by so many. It's just a thought, thrown out. And we have water issues, and we can't really support a lot of density on there with water. So, we're reaching out to the community for this bigger view of what does commercial look like in the town. And
well, maybe we can pull the slide back up with the survey results. What did the people say? Right. I think that's why we're here. This whole thing has been about a collaborative, and you guys have been very collaborative. We appreciate that. But maybe we get down to the data. What did the survey say? What were the things that residents were asking for? And also, I would also just plant a seed with you that since this is most impactful, I would say potentially from a land perspective to the Golden Eagle residents, I think our view is also pretty important here. And we got to make sure that we include the Golden Eagle residents in this, since it's right front center in front of where we're all going to be living. And you can hear John Greer, this could be the concern of people that live there. So it is, I think, a relevant topic, but I would like to see the data. What did the people say? What did they want commercial wise? Was it really a music venue? Because I don't recall seeing that.
We didn't ask those questions. These are the questions we're asking you for, collaboration on what commercial looks like. And, it might be worth another survey. I mean, we're we're doing this planning charrette because we would like to get creative input, but perhaps we should follow it up, periodically with surveys as, ideas are presented.
I think you should also include in that survey the developer of Golden Eagle. There's many lots for sale just above where this proposed, music venue would go that are in the $600,000 range. Those lots will not sell, in my opinion, if you put a concert hall there. And so you're going to lose lots of tax revenue on those lots, and it's going to devalue the properties that we all own. And I'll also disagree with the previous comment that the sound is going to travel up the mountainside. As somebody who knows that land very well and has been there many times, John knows this as well, the sound travels directly up that mountain. So I'm strongly opposed to that idea.
So if I could ask just a couple of follow-up questions, generally it sounds as if people are supportive of commercial and mixed use commercial. There's some reservations with regard to maybe the music venue. We don't have it's an idea that was thrown out today, but if it were residential with some mixed use or a definite commercial component, are people generally supportive of something like that? Is that what I'm hearing?
I am, Thomas. This is Court again. Yeah, I'm supportive of getting, some mixed use in there. I think we have to just be very cautious with, similar to, being cautious with light pollution, but being very cautious with sound pollution as well in this community.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, and this is John Greer again, and I'm okay with some commercial, but again, same thing that we ran into with Boulders is what is commercial. And when I watched the planning commission meetings with Boulders, there was discussion about the hotel, but the developer, if I recall correctly, said that they wouldn't even have a lease on a hotel. So it was a kind of an interesting concept, but they didn't have somebody lined up to come in and do it. And in my opinion, it's the same type of thing with the grocery store. You've got a grocery store 6 miles down the road. You're not going to put a Walmart there. You're not going to put a Smith's there. You may have a little corner store type thing.
Yeah, and as the planning commission and the town council discussed that in depth, and it really was a focus more really on restaurants, cafes, maybe a bodega, a small immigration market kind of grocery, things like that. It would be much smaller, much more locally, much more neighborhood oriented. Yeah,
I agree that sounds more neighborhood oriented. More than a music venue.
Okay, that's helpful.
Well, we are at the end of our meeting. This has been very helpful. Thomas, do you want to wind up?
Well, I'll just say that thank you so much for joining us. We're going to try to continue to do more of these charrettes where we can work with you, get input from you, and convey the information that we're working with to date. And so please keep looking for us. I think that, Jan, I think that this was kind of advertised on the website, as well as I think we did an email blast. So we'll continue to try to do that to get your input. We have a second one. We have a second version of this charrette lined up for next week. It'll be the same slideshow. It'll be the same presentation, asking for the same input just during the evening hours to make it convenient for those who couldn't make it during the lunchtime. And so subsequent to that charrette, we'll coordinate follow-up meetings, but we really appreciate this. For us, it's really important to get your input, because as we think about, this slide in particular, as we think about our limited opportunities for mixed use and commercial, we want to take your input directly to the planning commission and then ultimately the town council to find out what it is we should do, and stay true to our values that are outlined in the general plan, but also make sure that we can make the right kind of development that you all want to see doable within the community. So again, thank you so much for joining, and then we'll be in touch with regarding charrette round 2.
Thomas, maybe just ask one question. Will you provide meeting minutes? Also the actions that we agreed, including the one with the Golden Eagle and assessing kind of the loss of revenue associated with it, or other actions?
I think this was recorded, so I think that we'll put this, so you'll have access to this.
Yes.
But officially in the documented meeting minutes with actions, I don't want to have to listen to an hour-long recording. Will you document the key aspects of this meeting or any actions you're planning to take?
John, I have noted your request and I will agree to that, and I will send you a personal email with information. But yes, we will record the minutes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.